This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our weekly flagship show Marijuana Today, as well as the weekly shows Weed Wonks and Green Rush, which you can find over at weedwonks.com and greenrushpodcast.net. If you have a legal marijuana product, service, company, or brand that you want to introduce to the best audience in the industry, then you need to be spending some of your marketing budget with us. Get in touch with me today to learn how. Just email me at shay@mjtodaymedia.com with Shay spelled S-H-E-A. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 932 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We swing up to my corner of the country here in Maine for our top two stories, which does not happen all that often, so cool. Leading off the day is Penelope Overton over at Portland Press Herald, who has the big news that yesterday the Maine Office of Marijuana Policy announced it will no longer enforce a rule requiring that the state's legal marijuana businesses be majority owned by Maine residents. This one centers around a lawsuit by Dispensary Wellness Connection of Maine, which wants to raise investment funds, but doing so would dilute its current cap table of Maine ownership, as right now it's owned 51% by Maine residents. This is big news as it will definitely increase the amount of outside money coming into Maine. We may not be the biggest state in the country in terms of population with just over 1.3 million residents, but we are just up the road from Massachusetts and we do have a lot of tourists. At least we did in pre-pandemic days. So this one has some significance. Pop over to Penelope's story for more here if you need it. Our second Pine Tree State story again swirls around the Maine Office of Marijuana Policy, this time with Office Director Eric Gunderson saying yesterday during an interview with Maine Public Radio that the state's adult use program, which was supposed to have begun rolling out in March before being delayed indefinitely by the coronavirus pandemic, will continue to be held up until enough towns and cities clear the way for dispensaries to open to ensure proper coverage throughout the state. My own hometown of Portland, for instance, still is yet to give license to any adult use dispensaries. That's pretty much the case throughout the state, with both hesitancy to embrace adult use and the coronavirus dragging out the process. So we continue to exist on a wait-and-see basis for adult use in Maine. Another good one to read in full if you have Maine on your radar, which you should because we're a great state up here. Jumping down the East Coast a bit from Maine, we have Maryland Governor Larry Hogan vetoing last week a bill that would have automatically expunged low-level cannabis crimes from the state's database of searchable criminal charges. The legislation, House Bill 83, would have cleared away an estimated 200,000 cannabis charges had it gone into effect, but it was vetoed by Governor Hogan because he was mad that state lawmakers hadn't passed another crime bill that he has been pushing. Governor Hogan did the same thing last week, vetoing a similar bill that would have expunged nonviolent fourth-degree burglary charges, and said in a letter to top Maryland state legislators that it was all in response to the failed passage in the Maryland House of the Violent Firearms Offenders Act of 2020. Another story that's worth a full read, at least if this one catches your attention. Open up the Outlaw report here for more. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our weekly show Marijuana Today, as well as the Weed Wonks and Green Rush podcasts. If you have a legal marijuana business, brand, or service that you want to sell to the legal cannabis industry, then you need to become a sponsor of our work here at MJ Today Media. Because we've built up over the last 6 years the largest and best audience in legal marijuana. Let me tell you a little secret. It's not easy at all to get people to listen to your podcast. The average podcast gets something like 10 downloads per episode. If you can get 1,000 people to listen to you, then that is a remarkable accomplishment and puts your show in the top 20% of all podcasts in the world. Just think about what it would feel like to stand up in front of 1,000 people. Think of that power. Now consider the fact that we have more than 25 times that audience. So we get up in front of over 25,000 people every week, every day, every month, each of them likely to either be working in the industry or transitioning in. That's your audience. That's who you want to tell all about your legal marijuana business, brand, or service. And that's who we can help you reach. Our listeners trust us because we lay all of our cards out on the table, and every person on our shows know what they're talking about. So our audience is informed as it's entertained. It's the perfect nexus of smart industry content, and you can get your business, brand, or service involved by becoming a sponsor, where you'll reach new customers and build brand equity. We can work with budgets of all sizes and offer category exclusivity at certain levels. Do not delay. Send me an email today at shay@mjtodaymedia.com with Shay spelled S-H-E-A to find out how you can tap into what we're doing. That's shay@mjtodaymedia.com. All right, time for the Blitz. Jeff Smith over Marijuana Business Daily has a good chart and story showing the grip that the company Trulieve currently has on the Florida medical marijuana market, as it controls more than 50% of the state's market share against well-known competitors like Surterra and our own sponsor, Curaleaf. Jeff's chart shows not only the current market share makeup, but also the total sales figures in ounces sold for the state's top 5 sellers, with Trulieve dispensing more than 16,000 ounces during the week of April 24th through the 30th, far and away the top leader. If having a good handle on Florida makes you better at your job, give this one a read. Setting off a string of 3 headlines regarding financial reports, we have UK-based GW Pharmaceutical reporting on its latest fiscal quarter ending March 31st, which saw it pull down $120 million or so in revenue, up from $39.2 million in the same quarter last year, driving a net loss of $7.9 million, an improvement over the $52 million lost by the company in the same quarter in 2019. Those recent numbers were mostly driven by sales of the company's new FDA-approved drug Epidiolex. Open up New Cannabis Ventures for more on this. Up next is Canadian marijuana giant Tilray, which saw its revenue for the quarter ending on March 31st jump up 126% over the same quarter last year to $52.1 million US, though it was set against a total net loss on the quarter of $184 million, which the company says was mostly due to issues with how certain warrants were handled, along with impairment charges, increased operating expenses, and severance packages for newly laid-off workers. Tilray did helpfully point out in its press release that the $184 million loss was 16% less than the $219 million the company lost just the previous quarter. Sticking up in Canada, we have cultivation-focused company Kronos Group chiming in with its 2020 first quarter results with $8.4 million US in revenue, standing atop a heaping adjusted operating loss of $40.6 million. That compares in the same quarter to 2019 when Cronos had $3 million in revenue and $10 million in adjusted operating loss. So both numbers there are bigger, well, at least the absolute value, but I don't think that's a good thing. Another one you can read more over at New Cannabis Ventures. Florida-based multi-state cannabis operator Jushi Holdings just announced that it was pulling back from a previously announced acquisition valued at $12 million of a dispensary located in San Diego, California, but that it was still moving ahead with a pivot into Illinois' new adult use market, opening up its second store in the state just yesterday. A group of representatives from the adult use marijuana industry met with a panel formed by Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker over this past weekend to present their case for being involved with the state's planned reopening, which comes as both the number of cases and deaths from the coronavirus in the state are on the rise. Regular listeners will remember that Governor Baker excluded adult use shops from his essential businesses list that did cover medical marijuana, so adult use dispensary owners and operators are keen to get back open. Governor Baker's 17-member advisory board met with the industry reps on Saturday, including Joe Lusardi, CEO of our sponsor, Trulieve. And finally for today, Kyle Yeager takes us out with a story up in Vermont about the push in that state to enact legislation enabling legal marijuana sales. Vermont famously passed adult use legalization via the legislative process back in 2018, but neglected to set up a sales program. There was an effort to rectify that exclusion that was hopeful in landing results this year, but that was obviously knocked around a bit by Trump's coronavirus pandemic. Kyle's update here has Vermont House Speaker Mitzi Johnson saying in an interview with Vermont Public Radio that she thought that the proposed bill to set up adult use sales was possible for this year, just after lawmakers are able to respond to the viral fire burning up the country. Kyle's story is a good one and includes an embedded audio file of the interview itself. Give a read, give a listen. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.